Hi, my name is Ariel, and today I will be connecting my experience at Target to core concepts we've learned during this course. Um, So, I worked at Target. I was on the inbound team where we unloaded trucks. I also stocked, zoned my area, and backstocked inventory. The first aspect of culture, organizational culture, I decided to focus on was reward systems. So at Target, our reward was performance-based and was determined by how quickly we could unload the truck. If we met a certain time goal, we would be sometimes rewarded with Starbucks. And speed was really the only metric that was based on, not teamwork effort, not individual effort, or even accuracy, only speed. And I think at first I found this motivating, but over time, I think it lost its effectiveness. And I think it had symbolic meaning behind it. I think the reward system communicated that productivity and measurable performance was valued overall. There were times when the entire team worked hard but received no recognition at all, not even verbally. And I think that inconsistency um, made the reward or getting Starbucks like a dangling carrot, if that makes sense. I think eventually it wasn't even about receiving Starbucks because I think that reward itself is pretty small and not very significant. Even though we did appreciate it, I think it just became demotivating that we weren't really getting any recognition. There were times that even the reward would be mentioned beforehand, so the team would put in more effort, but then we weren't rewarded at all. And I think that connects kind of to the core concept of reward power, which we discussed in the course, where compliance is gained through the promise of a reward. But when that reward is inconsistent, I think that it can kind of backfire and weaken trust and motivation. I think this also kind of tied into scientific management theory because the unloading process was very systematic and almost machine-like. Each person had their own specific role, and the entire process focused on how fast it could be done. And I think when you're not gaining recognition and your job feels very repetitive and machine-like, it can kind of feel like you're replaceable. Um, And I think that just overall lowers employee morale. The second aspect I decided to focus on was emotional expression. Within the inbound team at Target, anger and frustration was pretty common. Yelling, complaining, and even aggressive behavior was normalized. And this behavior was rarely addressed, or at least not consistently, because it persisted for the time I was there. And from what I was told, um, it was like that before I even came. I think this experience really helped me understand that culture is constitutive. Culture is built through the communication and interaction that happens. Um, and I think what management chose not to address really shaped the environment. When negative behavior was tolerated, as long as the work was getting done, I think that symbolized that the emotional climate wasn't as important as productivity. And I think it became clear to me that the culture there was built on these behaviors that were allowed to continue. And I think that really reflects the constitutive approach, where organizations are created through communication and ongoing rea interactions, not just written policy. So instead, in my paper, I proposed a different approach, kind of considering the reality of retail because I know retail is really hard. to build a positive culture when there's so many factors like limited hours or just being shorthanded, not having enough time. It's just harder to build a positive culture. But I thought if management were to apply a theory Y approach to leadership, I think that would improve employee morale. I think a lot of times the frustration within the team was because we were shorthanded and we were kind of held to expectations that didn't feel necessarily realistic. So actually having management work with us, I think would build a different level of trust and respect. Also, I think if leadership recognized how communication really does shape the culture of an organization, they would probably take stronger measures against tolerating disrespect and also holding employees accountable for certain behavior. And I think overall, this would just create a safer and more professional environment. I think a practical way to implement this would just be to have weekly or even bi-weekly team huddles where team members are able to express their frustrations in a more organized way, but also give management the opportunity to um, give recognition for what the team is doing well. And I think over time, this could rebuild morale and create a healthier, more collaborative culture. And I think it could also help reduce turnover, which was also a big issue there. So I've reached the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. It was interesting being able to reflect back on my experience at Target and connect it to the core concepts. So, yep, that's all. Thank you.